Hello, hello, and welcome. Today is our Q&A for Sector September. If you can't tell, we'll be doing today's presentation or Q&A session in English. But if you're here with us live and you have any questions in Spanish, of course, you can ask me those questions in Spanish as well. Hoy vamos a hablar la mayoría del tiempo en inglés, pero si tienes preguntas, puedes preguntarme en español y claro que sí, voy a contestarte en español. Y también, cuando estoy compartiendo mi pantalla, voy a poner subtítulos en español también. So, I want to share my screen so we get these subtitles up and running. So, today, I've got a couple of questions that I've received over email and on Facebook, but I want to make sure that if you have any questions while we're here live, I can answer those questions as well. The first question is about current events. Today was the Federal Reserve meeting, and they decided to lower interest rates by 0.25%. This is the first time since December of last year since that rates were lowered. That's a good thing, generally. Lower rates means money is cheaper to borrow. When rates are lowering, that means that people can borrow more. Getting a loan for a house or a car becomes cheaper. People are more interested in putting money into the economy. But it's a balancing act because it's not just lower rates is always better. Otherwise, we'd always have lower rates. However, I just realized no one can actually chat. Now I fixed that. So everyone should be able to chat, say hi, and ask questions. So to what I was saying, lower rates isn't always better because when rates get lower, that means people will spend more money. If more money is making its way into the economy, inflation's going to go up. So if rates are too low, inflation goes up. But if rates are too high, then money becomes more expensive to borrow. People spend less, but that also means that unemployment goes up, the economy slows down. But yes, inflation goes down. The Federal Reserve, tries to balance that. They try and figure out what is the right amount of inflation, what is the right amount of interest rates to keep the economy in a healthy spot. They have wanted to lower rates for a while, but they have not lowered rates because one of the biggest things that they were not sure of were tariffs. Tariffs have been have had a growing impact on the economy, and we really haven't seen the full impact that they have or will have. So the Fed wanted to hold off. But they finally decided to make a change in this meeting. We all expected it, so it's no surprise that they changed rates. The reason I'm talking about this in so much detail, though, is not because it's the "and everyone lived happily ever after" kind of story. There's a lot more going on, and unfortunately, I can't really bring good news as to why. I'm going to lead this off by saying I don't care about politics. When I'm covering information or when we're talking about investing, it's never to criticize or support one party or one person or another. It's to look at the data, to see what the data is telling us, and figure out how that impacts or can impact our investments. The reality of it is a recession, the economy going down, is not a good thing for the economy or for the stock market. And if the economy starts to get worse, the market leads the economy. The stock market will start to go down before the economy does. So here's the thing. In July, we heard from the Federal Reserve what their plans were, what they hoped to do in 2025. What they hoped to do, they list in something called the Summary of Economic Projections. It's a whole lot of data that is interesting if you like data, or one of the most boring pieces of information you could ever learn. But here's the valuable part. They tell us where they see economic things like GDP, which is how much stuff we produce, unemployment, we all know that one, inflation, we also know that one, but also federal interest rates. Every person that is a member or is a leader of the Federal Reserve gives us their forecast. We don't have their names. We can't put a name to the forecast, but they all give us their forecast. The forecasts for the federal interest rate, that important number we were talking about, the lowest was 3.6%. The highest was 4.4%. And right now, today, the rate is 4.2%. So we're in that range, but there's 2 more meetings left in 2025. This was from June of 2025. Here is the update from today. The forecast for the federal fund rate went down from 3.9 to 3.6. But here's the big one. The lowest estimate, or rather the highest estimate, stayed at 4.4%. The lowest went from 3.6% down to 2.9%. Let's step through this together, because this is one of the most, in my opinion, insane things I've ever seen. There are 2 meetings left this year. The rate right now is 4.2%. Someone is forecasting, we don't know who, a rate of 2.9%. If that happened, if the rate went from 4.2 to 2.9, it would be the biggest change in modern history. We have never seen 2 meetings, 2 scheduled meetings, lower the rate that much. The closest things that we've seen were the dot-com bubble in 2001 and the Great Recession in 2008. Someone is predicting a global economic crisis with 2.9%. And keep in mind, this is a person that is one of the most important people for economic decisions in the US. We have never seen, outside of a recession, a rate cut above 0.5%, and now someone's predicting over 1%. That is insane. Before I start scaring us too much with this, I promise I'm going to lead this to, and here's why we should care and what we can do about it. But the last thing I want to add here, and again, I will repeat, I'm not here to pick sides with politics. I'm here to say what's happening. On Monday, a new member of the Fed was elected, or was approved. That person is one of the economists, one of the people that was responsible for the current tariff policies, the current tariffs we have. We don't know who made these different predictions. But here were the individual predictions from June. We're looking at the left dots. Each dot is one person. A new member is added, and here's what it looks like today. We do not know who that one person is, but that is unbelievably low. So one of two things is happening. One, this is the new person that was approved on Monday, and they are trying to move the economy towards a level that we would not ever see outside of a global crisis. Or there's a global crisis that we're just not aware of. All right, scary part's over. What can we do about it? Why should we care? How does this impact our investments? Right now, it doesn't. Why? Because if we look, the, the these interest rates, they have it's like changing the oil in your car. It's not going to make a difference today or tomorrow or even a week from now. But if you don't change the oil in your car, eventually you're going to have problems. And the longer you go without changing your oil, the bigger of a problem you're going to have. So, when it comes to the federal fund rate, this interest rate, it is a vote, and the majority of people still feel the exact same way as they did back in June. They feel a little bit more pushy towards more rate cuts, but in my opinion, that's not immediate cause for worry. I do think this is something important to share because it is so insane. But it shouldn't, in my opinion, make us worried about investing in the stock market, make us worried that the stock market is going to crash tomorrow. All this means is that if and when rates are lowered that much, it's going to look really, really good for a little bit and then get really, really bad. So if it were me, if I was looking at this and saying, what would I do? Short term, I would keep having fun investing in what I want to invest in. Anything I'm looking to hold for a year or two, I might be looking a little bit away from growth companies and looking a little bit more towards defensive companies, especially defensive companies with something like dividends. Anything with dividends, especially if it's in a defensive sector. One great example, not a recommendation, just an example, would be Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson has been performing fairly well this year, but most importantly, it is in a defensive sector, healthcare. It offers some pretty solid dividends, around 2.89% or 2.86% per year, is a dividend king. And overall, this is just one example. And the reason I'm saying it's not a recommendation, one is it's not. Two, it's just one of a handful of companies that offer dividends and are in defensive sector. These companies dealt with 2001. They dealt with 2008. They dealt with 2020 and the recession. That means very likely they can deal with whatever would happen from here. Federalreserve.gov. Is this the site to find out about the economy? Unfortunately, no. So the Federal Reserve, it's all of the reports from the Federal Reserve. Yes, they will include big statements, but if we start to read this, recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity moderated in the first half of this year. Job gains have slowed. Ugh. I feel like I need to have this up on one side and a dictionary up on the other. If I wanted to look at economic data, the website I personally love to use is Trading Economics. This website has a lot of really interesting data. When you first go to it, by the way, you're going to see every country imaginable. Go to countries, clear, and then go to United States. You're still going to get a bunch of stuff. We don't care. Keep it easy. Under impact, 3 stars. These are the most important reports in their opinion. And in my opinion, I would agree. This cuts out a lot of the nonsense. This just gives you the ones that will have the most impact. And if you read our newsletters, many of the what to watch fors, I'm looking at this website to figure out what economic things might happen that we should care about. This is just where that information is coming from. But here's the reason I love this website. If we click on the decision, they give you a summary of it. And this summary is amazing. They cut the rate by 25 basis points, 0.25%. It's the first reduction since December. Newly appointed Governor Moran stood alone in voting against the move, wanting there to be a bigger cut. This is a great summary that is way easier to read. And if you still are not convinced or you want more information, o si quieres traducir esto a español, tengo este mensaje, por favor, tradúcelo a español. You can go into ChatGPT, have it get translated to Spanish. Maybe there's still some words there that you're not familiar with. Okay. Convierte este mensaje a palabras y temas de 5 grado. It will bring down these reports to something that everyone can understand. Do I think that we're smarter than 5th graders? The game show makes me question it, if you've ever watched the game show, but I do think we're above 5th graders. However, it makes it so much easier to read and get the idea of these reports and have it be brought down to a more basic, vocabulario básico. It brings it down to a much easier level. Maybe a little too easy, but in my opinion, that's okay. Economic stuff is confusing. Let's make it as easy as possible. Pareció en alguna otra conferencia que si iba a poder darte un checadita a SMS para conocerla un poco más y poder. ¿Sabías si sería buena opción o estoy mal? Gran pregunta. Tristemente no estoy cómodo con la palabra de checadita. ¿Qué es esto? Quiero asegurar que puedo darte una respuesta correcta. Lo siento. So this is one spot that I would get that information. Trading Economics, it gives you what's happening this week, what's coming up, and a little short summary of what's going on. Another option is investing.com. This is one that is interesting because you can change the language up in the top right to Spanish. These will have all of the articles that are written directly in Spanish. Sadly, the option is very small in the top right, but here you can click on the little flag to change the language. En este sitio de investing.com puedes leer artículos sobre la economía y la bolsa, y en el subió derecha de la pantalla hay una bandera aquí y puedes cambiar la idioma a cualquier idioma, y estos artículos van a estar en español. Y también pienso que ellos tienen un calendario. Oh, there we go. Calendario económico. So this will be very similar information. Esto es muy cerca de el otro sitio. Todavía tienes que cambiar a solamente ver los resultados de los Estados Unidos, USA, ¿no? No tengo mucha experiencia con este calendario, pero sí, esto es un otro lugar donde puedes encontrar la información económica. So again, this is another place that you can find economic data. I'm going to translate it to English just to make it a little bit easier for me to navigate, and then I'll translate it back to Spanish. So under filters, here we can get rid of all. We need to find United States. And then we can change the importance to 3 stars. And here we get the similar pieces of information. Hopefully it still gives us a summary. It doesn't really give us a summary, which is unfortunate, but this is another place that we can find some of that information. Okay, checadita is to review. Gracias. Okay, claro que sí. I'm going to cover this in English and then translate each step to Spanish as well. I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. Quiero asegurar que estoy entendiendo tu pregunta correcta. ¿Quieres ver algunos métodos a usar Sectors Made Simple para invertir con las herramientas, verdad? Ok, claro que sí. Primero, quiero compartir esto con ustedes. Ahora, en nuestro sitio de YouTube, en nuestro canal de YouTube, estamos creando videos cada lunes y viernes. Voy a poner la lista de estos videos en el chat. Estos videos son en español y cada video habla sobre una manera para usar Sectors Made Simple, una estrategia o pasos para seguir, y a veces estos videos van a hablar sobre maneras a invertir en el corto plazo, como swing trading o opciones, y más estrategias, más despacios, como una estrategia semanal o en el largo plazo también. Puedo compartir contigo un ejemplo de una estrategia, pero tengo interés. ¿Qué método estás usando para invertir en la bolsa? Y, si tienes una idea en una manera que puedes invertir, pero no sabes los pasos para hacerlo, si si compartes esto conmigo, puedo darte un ejemplo más cerca de esta información. So, just to quickly translate, the question is about different ways to use Sectors Made Simple's tools. Right now, in September of 2025, we are releasing videos on our YouTube channel. Those videos include strategies using our tools. They're all short videos and are meant to be, you watch 5 minutes, you get a good idea of a strategy, and you get to figure out if it's something you like or don't like. Those videos are available both in English and in Spanish. No subtitles, all recorded in Spanish. También quiero compartir esto, que el sitio de Sectors Made Simple tiene traducciones a español adentro de los ajustes. Pero darte algunos ejemplos de 3 maneras a usar Sectors Made Simple. Primero, las estrategias. Estos son las maneras más básicas a usar Sectors Made Simple para invertir. Estas estrategias están invirtiendo una vez cada semana, están invirtiendo en una cosa y nada más. Estas estrategias pueden funcionar en una cuenta de retiro o en una cuenta de bursátil. En cualquier momento podemos mirar qué acción esta estrategia está manteniendo. Ahora, hasta ayer, la estrategia está invirtiendo en XLK, el fondo de tecnología. También puedes ver el rendimiento de la estrategia, el riesgo en el pasado de la estrategia y la diferencia desde los resultados de la estrategia como la bolsa. Aquí podemos mirar el rendimiento de la bolsa, 9.51, y el rendimiento de la estrategia, 12.62. Esto es en los 3 meses pasados. Podemos cambiar esto a mirar los resultados en los 6 meses pasados, año pasado y 3 años pasados también. En cada periodo podemos mirar que tenemos más rendimiento con menos riesgo. Pero estos son resultados en el pasado. Tristemente, nunca son garantías en el futuro. Pero esta información está actualizando cada semana para darte la información más correcta. Just to quickly translate, matrix strategies can be a really easy place to start with SMS because they all trade the same way. They buy one thing once per week, and it prints in clear words what it's buying. You can see the rendimiento is the profit of the strategy, reducción is the risk, and how that risk to reward compares to the S&P 500. We can see for this strategy in the 3-month, 6-month, 12, and 36-month, we have both higher returns and lower risk. But as always, past results can't guarantee future performance. Esto es una manera para usar las herramientas. Una otra manera es si quiero invertir en una compañía, puedo entrar al matrix del S&P 500. Aquí podemos mirar cada compañía en el S&P y cuáles compañías son más fuertes. Ahora, Podemos ordenar esta lista para mirar las mejores compañías y las peores compañías también. Si quiero invertir en este momento, una manera solamente es un ejemplo. Quiero ver una compañía con una señal de compra en point and figure más cerca. En esta página podemos mirar la señal. Voy a filtrar para mirar breakouts. Estos son cuando el precio está subiendo hasta un nivel de resistencia. Quiero ver si el precio está subiendo y voy a mirar la orden de estas compañías con sus fechas de esta señal. Aquí podemos mirar ayer, el 16 de septiembre de 2025, tendremos 7 compañías que entran a señales de compra. Estos porcentajes aquí significan su fuerza hasta las otras compañías en el S&P. En este ejemplo, estamos mirando que cada compañía tiene fuerza interesante. ¿Cómo podemos elegir solamente una compañía? Podemos usar una otra herramienta, se llama matrices personalizadas. Esto va a darnos el poder para crear una comparación de un grupo de compañías para mirar cuáles compañías tienen más fuerza. Voy a usar la lista desde el S&P 500 Screener. Este es BXP CAT COIN HSY LLY STLD. Voy a usar estos 7 TXT también. Estas 7 compañías adentro de un matrix personalizada. Um, ok, aquí tenemos estas 7 compañías. Voy a crear este matrix y tenemos que esperar un poco para crear esta información. While we're waiting for that to load, I want to repeat what I had just covered in English as well. I wanted to show a way that we can figure out what companies are going on resistance breakouts right now. What that means is that their price is going above a previous high. This is a way of trading something called support and resistance. We have a lot of education on that, but if you don't really care, I understand. What we're looking for are companies whose prices are creating new highs right now. And we can do that by sorting by signal date. The signal we're interested in are new highs, also called breakouts. We also, of course, want the price to be going up. So we can sort to only show companies in breakouts whose prices are going up. And if we sort then by signal date, we can see that 7 companies went on breakouts yesterday. This information is updated daily. BXP, CAT, COIN, HSY, LLY, STLD, and TXT. All of these companies have pretty good strength. For example, BXP, 85% means it's beating 85% of companies in the S&P 500. 76%, 80%. All of these are pretty darn good. So how do we make a decision if we can only buy one? This is where another tool like custom matrices can come in. We can take this group or any group of up to 7 companies and compare just those companies to see who the leaders are. Now we're just waiting for this custom matrix to load, and it's done. So we can look at the results. Ya tenemos los resultados de esta comparación y podemos mirar. Abajo podemos mirar estos cambios y aquí tenemos los líderes y las otras. DXP y STLD tienen los mejores números de fuerza relativa. Tienen 9. También HSY tiene 5, TXT 5, COIN 4, TAT 2 y LLY 2. En una pantalla podemos mirar cuáles compañías tienen la fuerza mejor y en este ejemplo estamos mirando TXP y STLE. So we can see when we load up this custom matrix, which of these companies has the highest and lowest strengths. If we sort by total count, which is just overall score, we can see BXP and STLD have by far the highest strength, while companies like CAT and LLY have the lowest. The beautiful thing about custom matrices is that you can create them. You decide what companies go into it, and there is no limit to how many you can make. No tenemos un límite del número de estos matrices que puedes crear. Quiero darte un ejemplo adicional de un matrix que podemos usar. I'm going to give one more example of a custom matrix we can create. I talked a little bit before about how dividend companies are a pretty interesting group to look at, mostly because they offer, well, dividends, consistent returns in the form of dividends, regardless of what their share price is doing. It's never a guarantee, but dividend kings have decades of history to show that they can provide dividends regardless of how the economy is doing. Los reyes del dividendos tienen una historia de 20 o más años de estos dividendos y tienen una historia que pueden manejar la bolsa y la economía en cada cosa que hemos tenido. So really quickly, I want to go here and I want to find a list of dividend kings with you all. I'm just doing it on the other screen really quick. I want to find a better list than that one. So if we pull up a list of the dividend aristocrats, dividend kings, dividend aristocrats, similar, just a few differences, but all of them have over 25 years of history of providing dividends. The reason I want to look at the aristocrats, though, is because those companies belong to the S&P 500, meaning we can put them back into this matrix. Entonces, podemos mirar la lista de compañías adentro de la lista de dividendos aristócratas. Estas compañías son un parte del S&P 500 y podemos poner estas compañías en el filtro del S&P 500. Here, for example, we can look to sort and find a símbolo. We can put in these companies we're interested in. Oh. Why isn't that popping up? Is this the wrong list? One moment, please hold. Because that should have just been S&P 500 companies. I'm going to do this in a slightly different way. In the meantime, if you have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will be happy to answer them after we look through what I want to show. Okay. Now, let's try this again. Aquí tenemos una lista de compañías con una historia buenísima de dividendos. Podemos mirar o podemos encontrar una lista de estas compañías en el Internet y podemos poner esta lista adentro de este filtro. Puedes seguir más compañías aquí. Y aquí es, something's wrong with this list because some of these companies are not S&P 500 companies. But regardless, here we have the list of just a few. And what we can see are all of the same pieces of information. We can find some of the best dividend companies and some that have a little bit less strength. Like, for example, ABT, 52%, CHRW, 90%. Pretty cool. Another way we can do that is we can put in all of these companies and then sort by sector. Maybe I'm worried about the economy and I only want to see companies that are in defensive sectors like staples or utilities. We can use those filters as well. Puedes usar más filtros en esta herramienta para crear una lista perfecta para el método que estás usando la herramienta y con tus metas en la bolsa. En este ejemplo, estoy compartiendo una manera para encontrar compañías con dividendos adentro del S&P 500 y podemos usar dos filtros en el mismo momento. Estamos mirando el filtro para solamente, estamos mirando estas compañías que estamos entrando aquí adentro del símbolo y podemos añadir un filtro de sectores también. Más temprano en este webinar he hablado sobre mi opinión que si queremos aminorar el riesgo con la economía en el futuro, podemos investigar compañías adentro de sectores más defensivos como staples y utilidades. Con esto, podemos usar estos dos filtros para mirar compañías con dividendos en sectores defensivos. So, again, these are just a few examples of ways to use our tools. The beautiful thing about Sectors Made Simple is that these tools are meant to benefit everyone. It's not meant to just be learn our strategies. It's meant to be, we can teach you new strategies if you're interested, but we can also save you time with strategies you're already doing. Con nuestras herramientas, no tienes que aprender solamente estrategias nuevas. Puedes usar o puedes continuar con estrategias que ya estás usando con esas herramientas para mejorar la experiencia a encontrar oportunidades en la bolsa con más confianza y con menos tiempo. So these tools are meant to not just create new strategies, but also help you improve the strategies you're already using by saving you time and letting you make more informed decisions. Si tienes preguntas o quieres aprender más, si tenemos una herramienta para ayudarte con una estrategia en específica, envíame un email a support@sectorsmadesimple.com. Ahí puedes apréndame una estrategia para swing trading y puedo ayudarte. So again, if you have questions or you want to see if there's a way, or you literally want me to just help you with steps that you can improve your existing strategies, or just say, hey, I want to know a strategy that I could use here, send me an email and I'm more than happy to help you out and answer your question. My email is support@sectorsmadesimple.com. Are there any other questions? I don't see any questions in the Q&A. The chat's open if you guys have more questions for me in English, o si tienes preguntas en español también. I see a couple people have their hands raised. If possible, can you if you have questions, can you put the questions either in the chat or in the Q&A? That'll help me to be able to make sure I'm answering your question perfectly. Veo que hay dos personas con sus manos arriba. Si tienes preguntas, por favor, pon tu pregunta en el chat o en el lugar de Q&A y esto va a ayudarme a contestar tu pregunta. How is today's Fed report viewed by the market and options traders? Bullish, bearish, or neutral? I usually trade Tesla, and while today's news was more negative than positive, the stock market still went up after the report. Amazing question. Absolutely amazing question. How is the Fed report viewed by the market? Well, let's go and look at the market after the announcement. I don't want to see the person SPY. I want to see the symbol SPY. Something's weird with this chart. Try this. Okay, same thing. If we look at this on the order of 5 minutes, let's see if we can find when the meeting happened. Well, the meeting ended at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Powell spoke at 11:30. And then the market closed. So at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, the meeting ended. Half hour later, Powell started speaking. And then at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, the market closed. Yes, so Powell spoke at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. The times you see down here are Pacific time. But the actual decision for interest rates was published at 11. Actually, I'm curious if we can see what time the summary of economic projections was published. For release at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So that report was released at 11 a.m., which is why we started to see market movement. Here's the thing, and this is my opinion. How did the market react? The market didn't care. We forecasted that the rate cut was going to be 0.25%. We forecasted that Jerome Powell, the head of the FOMC, was going to get up and say, because of the growing impact of tariffs, blah, 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 we remain committed to lowering interest rates. but a lot of it ends up being the more of these you watch, it's the same story every month. Things are moving in this direction. It's a lot of words to say almost nothing that's new information. The Fed is not going to come out and announce something so unbelievably surprising that the market reacts in a crazy way. But almost every single time the Fed meets, this happens. The market spikes, drops, and then recovers. Very rarely is that recovery way above or way below. So, how was the Fed report viewed by the market? The market didn't care. If we draw a line between where the price ended the day and where it started the day, there was almost zero change. The S&P 500 today was down 0.03%. If you were an options trader, this period, these last 2 hours of the market were crazy. And as an options trader doesn't care if the market's going up or down. They just want it going somewhere. They don't want it going sideways. So around earnings, around an FOMC meeting, we'll usually see this. Not a lot of change because everyone's kind of sitting there and waiting. There's a big change, positive or negative. There's a correction and an overreaction. And then everyone realizes it's business as usual. So while today's news was, I wouldn't say it was more negative than positive, it was just what we expected. Honestly, personally, it was better than I expected. The forecast for GDP from June went up to 1.6%. Unemployment still is at 4.5%. That, it's 4.5%, but 0% unemployment, that doesn't happen. Anything below 5% is considered healthy. Inflation at 3%, they want to get that down to 2%, but they're not all of a sudden terrified of 7% inflation by the end of the year. There were no major surprises. To me, the only thing that was like, what the heck is going on, was whoever in the world that one person that predicted a global catastrophe was. Everyone else, if anything, the numbers were more positive than negative. The negative part was Powell continuing to say, we are seeing more impact of tariffs. Voy a dar un resumen en español de eso. Usualmente, después de la reunión del Fed, podemos mirar cambios más largos hasta el cierre de la bolsa en el mismo día. Estamos mirando aquí, después de esta reunión, tenemos cambios más largos. El jefe del Fed, Jerome Powell, tenía una reunión para preguntas y respuestas después de esta reunión. Pero al cierre de la bolsa, miramos que el cambio en este día fue más o menos 0%. En general, el tema de esta reunión fue ni positivo o negativo. Sí, estamos mirando que la porcentaje del Fed Fund Rate está bajando más rápido, pero todavía estamos mirando que los números de la economía como GDP está subiendo más como la información en junio. En general, pienso que esto es un poco positivo, pero pienso que no vamos a mirar un cambio muy largo después de hoy. So yeah, super interesting. If you're an options trader, there's probably a lot of action going on here, but I wouldn't say it was overwhelmingly positive or negative. One thing I love following is the AAII's sentiment survey. This is a weekly update about how the members of the AAII, American Association of Individual Investors, feels about the next 6 months in the market. Right now, or as of last week, it was 28% feeling bullish, almost 50% feeling bearish. That number is going up quite a bit. So that gives us an idea that individual investors are getting a little bit more worried. So this number I think is interesting to follow, but the part that I really love is the week's special question. This is always something related to current events. So what are people looking at? Dividend stocks? Yeah, 24% of people are interested mostly in dividend stocks. Only 10% are interested in growth stocks, and only 4% are interested in small cap. Now we start to ask questions of why. And that's where the fun of this comes in. We can see not just who's saying thumbs up or thumbs down, but every week we get another little piece of information. And honestly, this to me is always something good to check in on because I'm going to look at something in the news and freak out. Most people do. That's why it's the news. And then you come here and you look at where people are putting their money and you realize people are looking a little bit more defensive, but no one's pulling their money out of the stock market, stuffing it under their bed, or trying to offload it to a bank somewhere in the Cayman Islands. This is a contrarian index where the bears are the majority. We can expect a positive move. Yes, just like BPI, when there are more people that think the market is going to go down, there's more room for growth. Versus when the number is super positive, that means that everyone's throwing their money into the market, and a lot of that is going to end up being overbought. Versus a lot of people being bearish means it can be oversold. But this number, as we can see, changes really quickly. In 2 weeks, it's gone from 40% bearish to 50%, so it can change fairly fast. That's why I always think it's more interesting to look at the special question and how people are answering. Para eso sirve ese mes para encontrar oportunidades. Como dice, siempre hay algo subiendo por algún lado, ¿verdad? Puedes usar, si estoy entendiendo esta pregunta correcta, estás hablando o estás preguntando sobre la manera que puedes mirar si el precio está subiendo afuera de fuerza relativa, ¿verdad? ¿Esto es la pregunta? Ok. En el S&P 500 screener, la dirección y la señal son precios, no son fuerza relativa. Si estamos mirando aquí una dirección negativa, el precio está bajando en este momento, pero esta compañía ya está en una señal de breakout. Las únicas columnas que son fuerza relativa son largo plazo, corto plazo y total. Y tenemos enlaces en cada símbolo que puedes mirar el gráfico de esta compañía con point and figure. Aquí podemos mirar que aquí es el gráfico de la compañía A. Esto solamente es los cambios del precio, no son la fuerza relativa. Y aquí puedes entrar cualquier compañía o fondo de índice en la bolsa. No tienes que usar otras herramientas para encontrar su precio. So just to quickly repeat, when it comes to finding actual price changes for these stocks, the S&P 500 screener, the direction and signal are both based on the price. Down arrow means the price is actually going down right now. Breakout means that the most recent event, the most recent thing that we care about was a new high. For each one of these companies, if we click, before we look at that, the only things on the S&P 500 screener that are relative strength are the long-term strength, short-term strength, and total. Everything else is based on the company itself. Also, if we click on the symbol of any of these companies, it will open up the point and figure chart for that company. For example, here we can see this is the chart for Apple. It went on a point and figure breakout on June 30th, hit a new all-time high on August 6th, and right now is trying to break another level of resistance to create a new all-time high if it reaches $244. So you don't need to go to another site to look at the actual price. With the S&P 500 screener, you get both relative strength, but also company performance. Relative strength, short-term, long-term total count percentages, actual price, direction, and signal. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank you all so much for joining us for this live Q&A. These are a ton of fun to do. And there were a lot of great questions, both in English and Spanish. And I want to reassure you, if you are interested in getting more answers in Spanish or learning more about these tools in Spanish, next week's Q&A on Wednesday at the same time, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, will be offered in Spanish. So you can join for that. I'll have the subtitles in English so you don't miss out on anything, but that webinar and Q&A will be all in Spanish. En la semana siguiente vamos a hacer un otro webinar de Q&A y este webinar va a estar en español. Pero muchísimas gracias por tus preguntas hoy y si tienes más preguntas, siempre puedes enviarme un email a support@sectorsmadesimple.com. If you have any more questions, you can always send me an email, support@sectorsmadesimple.com. Thank you all so much. Sectors Made Simple subscribers, I hope to see you all tomorrow for SM Español. I have a super fun spreadsheet to share with you based on those swing trading strategies that we covered last week. An incredible community member, I don't know if they want to be named or not, so I won't name them just yet, has given me some inspiration to create a spreadsheet to help us track and study our swing trades better. So tomorrow I will be sharing that spreadsheet with you guys so we can learn how to use that together. Mañana voy a compartir una hoja de cálculo para seguir nuestras compras y ventas con las estrategias de swing trading. Únete a este webinario para encontrar y aprender a usar esta hoja. But again, thank you all so much. Hope to see you all in SM Español tomorrow or in our future webinars to come. Thank you. Bye.